The market's fastest growing segment right now is that for Qashqai-like crossovers and compact soft-roading SUVs. If you want something that offers the best of both and offers the finest driving dynamics, the lowest running costs, the most space, and arguably the best value in the class, then it's hard to ignore this alternative, Mazda's CX-5. Not the first car of this sort you thought of, is it? But try one, and you might just think it to be the best. You don't have to be an automotive strategist to see where the sales growth is at present when it comes to family cars. Wander into the showroom of almost any mainstream manufacturer and you'll trip over either a Qashqai-like crossover model or a Freelander-style compact 4x4, perhaps even a selection of them. I say almost. One volume manufacturer has watched from the sidelines in recent years as Qashqais have cleaned up and Freelanders have clogged up the school run. Mazda. Aside from an ill-fated attempt back in 2001 to rebadge a petrol-engine Ford Maverick, the Japanese mark has missed out as rivals made hay while the sun shone. Turns out though that the Hiroshima maker's engineers haven't been idle. Indeed, it turns out that they knew how to make a potentially class-leading car of this kind all the time, one that at last hit the market in the spring of 2012. This model, the Mazda CX-5. So, is this a soft-roading RAV4 or Freelander-style compact SUV with at least a modicum of off-road gumption? Or is it the kind of family hatchback on stilts the industry calls a crossover model? Qashqai or Peugeot 3008 style cars that are better suited to Sainsburys than the Serengeti. I'm going to leave you to make up your own mind on that one. Probably the definition doesn't matter. Depending on your preference, you could probably pigeonhole this CX-5 either way, which is exactly as Mazda wants it. That's why it's created modestly powered entry-level two-wheel drive versions for school-run mums and pokey all-wheel driven variants with a tougher remit further up the range. Here's a brand that's reaping the benefits of late arrival to this particular party. A maker that's looked carefully at what's available, what buyers want and what they actually need. A measured approach that ought to pay dividends and will need to, given the crowded competition for sales in this particular sector of the market. Let's judge this CX-5 on its merits. Now, the key to understanding a CX-5 is getting to the bottom of what Mazda means when it uses the term Sky Active Technology. And basically this is Mazda's program for radical lightweight efficiency, and it debuts on this car. It claims clear benefits in terms of economy and emissions, and it also means that this model drives quite differently to most of its key rivals. And by differently, I mean better. The entry-level petrol model weighs little more than 1,400 kilograms, which is remarkable. To put that in perspective, a similarly sized Land Rover Freelander weighs well over 1,700 kilograms, which means that you could put a couple of adults and 2 kids in a CX-5 and it would still weigh less than an empty Freelander. Now you feel that this car is light on its feet as soon as you move away. Mazda has worked hard at reducing friction in the drivetrain, and the gearbox feels light, the pedals are well spaced, and the 3-spoke sports steering wheel falls beautifully to hand. Now, I'm driving the range-topping all-wheel drive diesel model here, the twin turbocharged 2.2 litre power plant, putting out a healthy 175 PS. On this particular flagship model, you don't get the option of a front-wheel drive only variant. That's something that so many customers for this kind of car now seem to want. But if you go for the detuned 150 PS version of this car, then you can order it with either front-wheel drive or all-wheel drive. And if you go for the entry-level 2-litre petrol model, then front-wheel drive is the only choice. That 2-litre petrol model has 165 PS. Like so many other things about the CX-5, the driving experience may not grab you as being unique at first. It's only when you spend some time with it that you begin to appreciate what it can do. For a start, I can't think of any other compact 4x4 or crossover of this kind that covers the ground quite so effortlessly. The 2.2 litre Skyactiv-D diesel isn't short of torque, it's not short of pulling power, but it isn't just that. After all, the 150 PS version of this unit has, on paper at least, actually slightly less torque than the comparable 2.2 litre TD4 diesel you'll find in a Land Rover Freelander. But consider this, sprint that Freelander from rest to 62 miles an hour and it'll take you 11.7 seconds. Do the same thing in the Mazda and it'll occupy just 9.2 seconds. That's nearly 25% quicker from what on paper at least seems to be exactly the same size of engine. Now you begin to appreciate just what a special car this is. Go for the top 175 PS version of this model and you'll find that rest to 62 miles an hour takes just 8.8 seconds on the way to a top speed of 129 miles an hour. But don't despair if budget limits you to the entry-level version of this Mazda. This is not a car in which you have to pay top dollar to get a top drive. In fact, it could even be argued that the 2 litre petrol variant is an even sweeter drive thanks to its lightweight engine. Here rest to 60 occupies 9.2 seconds on the way to a top speed of 124 miles an hour. But you do have to rev it a bit to get to that performance, which is where the diesel variants hold a slight edge. Especially when it comes to overtaking prowess, which is genuinely impressive once you get into the meat of the power band. But it isn't the sheer straight line speed that you'll remember after spending some time with this machine. It's the way that it rides and responds. Now, I'll admit it, I was skeptical when Mazda claimed they were trying to bring the spirit of their MX-5 sports car into this CX-5. But now I can see what they mean. Take the steering. It's an electrical setup, so it doesn't initially seem to quite have the feel of one of the better old hydraulic systems, but adjust as you can quite quickly, and you'll soon find yourself using it to place this car through corners with real precision. This CX-5 takes them with huge composure, and you feel lots of trust in the front end. There's not too much body roll, and the car doesn't pitch about either, so you don't get a lot of dive when you press the brake pedal, nor do you get that boat-like feeling that the prow is rising when you accelerate hard away, the kind of thing that plagues other compact 4x4s that aren't as well tied down. There's a directness that you get at the helm and a tautness to this Mazda's responses that is unlike anything else in the segment. Get out of one of these after driving hard and into a Freelander or a CR-V, and you do well not to plough clean off the road at the first corner. This is the best drive in its class. It's as simple as that. Which is all well and good. But as Mazda's competitors will point out, you don't buy something of this sort with the primary objective of hurling it round the lanes. So the school run basics need to be right. They are, which is something you'll appreciate from the moment you get behind the wheel and realise how easy it is to find a comfortable driving position. This is one of the few 4x4s that you feel that you sit in rather than being perched upon. There's a bit more wind and road noise than I would like, and rear visibility can be slightly hampered by the thick rear pillars, but little else merits criticism. The brakes are good and the ride is supple and forgiving unless you hobble the whole setup with a set of optional 19-inch alloy wheels. And the 6-speed manual gearbox, well, it's a real gem with a sporty feel and just the right kind of shift quality for crisp wrist flick changes. Even the automatic gearbox, it's a 6-speeder that's optional on diesel models, seems to have been developed to increase the CX driver's feel of connectedness. It doesn't have that kind of slushy feeling on and off the throttle that you expect from an automatic. You really do feel like you're at one with the car. And off-road prowess, assuming that you're one of the minority of CX-5 customers who've opted for an all-wheel drive variant that will test it, well, it says much that I've got this far without even mentioning that. The bar is set almost embarrassingly low in this class when it comes to ability off the beaten track. But this Mazda will probably be quite as capable as most of its target customers will need it to be in this respect. Now, like most of its competitors, it has a system that will automatically apportion grip depending on the terrain that you're on. In normal conditions, 100% of the drive is directed to the front wheels, but should slip be detected, up to 50% of that drive can be pushed rearwards. There's no low-range transfer case, of course, or a fancy hill descent control mechanism, so I wouldn't advise tackling anything much more arduous than a forest track. Think of it instead as an all-weather carry-all, and you'll be nearer the mark. Mazda certainly likes its catchphrases. Its marketeers have familiarised us with Zoom Zoom, and every marketing missive surrounding this CX-5 reminds us of its Sky Active technology. Now, here's another buzzword to consider: Kodo. I'm told it's Japanese for soul of motion, this being the company's latest design theme, this CX-5 being the first production car to integrate it. Does it work? Well, the stylists are predictably enthusiastic. British design chief Peter Birtwistle reckoning that the chromium line around the lamps and the grille represents a charging puma. Maybe he's seeing something I'm not. As far as I can make out, there's little of the muscle, the tension and the athleticism that marked out Mazda's Minagi. That's the concept car from which this CX-5 was first developed. Still, what we've ended up with is a smart and contemporary crossover-y compact 4x4. And even if the shape isn't especially memorable, its aerodynamics are, with a slippery 0.33 CD drag factor that's aided by door mirrors that are mounted directly onto the shoulders of the doors, and a rear-mounted wing that aids airflow over the back of the car. The cabin isn't as obviously styled as some rivals, but the piano black inserts and the chrome splashes look good in a low-key sort of way. The materials quality is especially good on the upper part of the dash, not quite so good lower down, with lower panels that are very obviously built down to a price, though Mazda will doubtless justify that on the basis of weight saving. There's certainly plenty of switches, 55 in all, not counting the chunky column stalks, though fortunately these don't include an electronic handbrake switch. You get a proper manual handbrake here. So ergonomically it's all pretty sound. It's really very straightforward to figure out how everything works. As a driver, you're faced with a hooded binnacle containing 3 circular dials, ahead of which sits a lovely 3-spoke multi-function leather-trimmed sports steering wheel. To the left of that is a 5.8-inch colour infotainment touchscreen with menus that are accessible via a BMW iDrive style Mazda multimedia commander control, situated here between the seats. And once you're familiar with how it works, it's much easier to control the touchscreen menus via this control, rather than trying to jab at the touchscreen while you're going along and the vehicle's in motion. And in the back, well, like most models in this segment, this one doesn't offer a 7-seat option. But the rear bench is the most accommodating in the class, offering more space than you'd find even in Mazda's supposedly larger CX-7 model. Head and legroom are both relatively good, and space to stretch out is aided by the fact that you can easily get your feet underneath the seats ahead. Now, as with most cars of this sort, a position in the middle of the back seat really means that you've drawn this short straw. But even here, you're better off than you would be in most of this model's rivals, thanks to a comfy backrest and the fact that the transmission tunnel is relatively low. Out back, once you've raised the rear hatch and admired a tonneau cover that opens and closes with the tailgate, you'll find a load bay that's the largest in the class at 503 litres, and you get underfloor storage compartments too. You can extend it further by making use of the Karakuri seat folding mechanism. Now this is a three-piece 40-20-40 independent seat folding remote control arrangement that's operated by these little latches on either side of the loading bay. Now if you pull the latches, the seats remotely go forward, they fold almost flat and free up 1,620 litres of total fresh air. You do get some suspension intrusion on either side here, but it's a pretty hefty load bay nonetheless. List pricing sees CX-5 ownership pitched in the usual £20,000 to £30,000 bracket for cars of this kind. Now, at the bottom end of that spectrum, there'll be feebly capable Qashqai-like crossovers that'll save you a bit, while at the top end, you'll find Freelander-style SUV compact 4x4 models that perhaps have flashier badges or maybe will be a bit more capable in the Gobi Desert. But Mazda isn't really aiming for either of those two extremes, and on that basis, I reckon they've got the pricing just about right. As you'd expect, South Korean budget brand models like Kia Sportage or Hyundai's iX35 will undercut this CX-5 by quite a bit, and you'd also save a little if you were looking at, say, a Land Rover Freelander, a Volkswagen Tiguan or a Ford Kuga. But you'd have to find quite a lot more if you were after cars like Toyota's RAV4, Honda's CR-V, BMW's X1 or Audi's Q3. If, having done your homework and made the comparisons, you've decided that it's a CX-5 that you want, then you'll need to find a £1,600 premium to progress from the entry-level 2-litre petrol to the lower-powered 150 PS version of the 2.2-litre diesel that most will want. Now, it's this lower-powered 2.2-litre diesel that'll be the best seller, partly because it's the only variant in the range that can be ordered with either 2- or 4-wheel drive. Well, that's not the only reason. It's also the fact that you have to find another £2,500 if you want to find the pokiest 175 PS version of this diesel, which seems rather a lot to get another 25 PS. But whichever of the two diesels you choose, there's the option of automatic transmission for an extra £1,200. But what about equipment? Well, whichever CX-5 model you choose, the 2-litre petrol or either of the 2.2-litre diesels, you should find it pretty well specified. And by pretty well specified, I really do mean that, because even the entry-level models come with, well, let's go through the list. You get alloy wheels with tyre pressure monitoring, you get auto headlamps and wipers, daytime running lights, front fog lamps, privacy glass, rear parking sensors, power folding mirrors, and a rear spoiler. Moving inside, you'll find dual zone climate controlled air conditioning, an auto dimming rear view mirror, Bluetooth compatibility for your mobile phone, a trip computer, cruise control, audio controls on the leather trimmed steering wheel. You'll find an iPod connection, AUX in and USB points for the decent quality 6-speaker stereo. There's a 5.8-inch colour touchscreen and a hill holder clutch to stop you drifting backwards on uphill junctions. As you'd expect, there's plenty of safety kit too, with Isofix child seat fastenings and twin front, side and curtain airbags, along with TCX traction control and the usual electronic aids for stability and braking to try and ensure that hopefully you'll never have to use them. One safety feature fitted across the range though you might not expect. It's called Smart City Brake Support, and it's a frontal collision avoidance system that'll hopefully enable you to avoid low speed collisions of up to 19 miles an hour. Now, if you're about to have one of those, or the system thinks you are, then it'll automatically apply the brakes and reduce the power output. Very clever. Top models like this one also get the option of a safety kit, which includes an RVM rear vehicle monitoring system to warn of vehicles in your blind spot, a lane departure warning system to stop dozy drivers from veering out of their lanes on the highway, and a high beam assist system that will dip your headlights automatically for you at night in the face of oncoming traffic. The CX-5's unexpectedly imperious progress continues when it comes to cost of ownership, and here is where the Sky Active technology really begins to pay off. clean enough to meet exacting Euro 6 emission standards. Thanks to a weight loss program and a clever I-stop start-stop system that cuts the engine when you're stuck in traffic or waiting at the lights, the 2-litre petrol variant can deliver the kind of economy and emissions that until recently wouldn't have shamed a mid-sized diesel SUV. It manages 47.1 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and puts out 139 grams per kilometre of CO2, which means that the usual advice to opt for a diesel if you cover anything over an average annual mileage doesn't hold quite so true here. Of course, you might need all-wheel drive, an automatic gearbox, or perhaps just a bit more torque for towing, in which case you'll need one of the diesel models also equipped with start-stop. Go for the entry-level 150 PS two-wheel drive variant, and you can expect to see 61.4 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and a CO2 emissions figure of just 119 grams per kilometre. Small wonder that this is the big draw. The figures don't take too much of a dip if you order that car with all-wheel drive. There you're looking at 54.3 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 136 grams per kilometre of CO2. And these are the same figures that you'll get in the 175 PS all-wheel drive diesel model. That's the one I'm driving here. Go for either diesel with an automatic gearbox and the figures fall to 51.4 miles to the gallon on the combined cycle and 144 grams per kilometre of CO2. Stick those figures alongside those of obvious rivals and the differences are so great in Mazda's favour that it's almost embarrassing. Typically you're looking at being able to go 10 to 15 miles further on every gallon of fuel and put out as much as 20 to 30 grams per kilometre less of CO2 than a directly comparable rival. And that, of course, will have huge benefits in, benefiting kind tax for company car drivers. Nor is this all gone unnoticed by the industry, which is already translating this running cost supremacy into strong residual value predictions. Experts CAP reckon that the best-selling 150 PS 2.2 litre diesel models will be worth between 44 and 46% of their original asking price at the crucial 3-year 60,000 mile benchmark. That means that this Mazda will fare better than other rivals that maybe you'd expect to hold their value in a stronger way. After the 3 years, you'd get £700 more back for this Mazda than you would for a comparable Volkswagen Tiguan. And it's a similar story when it comes to the 2-litre petrol CX-5, which holds on to around 45% of its value after 3 years or 60,000 miles. That means that compared to the comparable Volkswagen Tiguan model, you get £300 more of your initial purchase price back. What else? Well, insurance groupings range between groups 17 to 23, that's on the 1 to 50 grouping scale, and maintenance costs should be very affordable. The CX-5 isn't one of those cars that jumps out at you on first acquaintance, but as with many Mazdas, its modesty hides a product packed with innovation. The result is excellent packaging, class-leading economy and emissions, and driving dynamics that set a new benchmark in this sector. Add in high specification and competitive pricing, and you have a compelling proposition. Nothing less was necessary, given the Japanese maker's tardiness in entering this segment. The styling may be nothing special, but almost everything else about this car is. It's yet another example of Mazda going its own way, doing things differently. Which means, well, something quite simple really. Looking for a car of this kind? Start here first.